The cake hit the floor, the laughter exploded across the ballroom, and a single father stood frozen with frosting covering his face while the company's female CEO pointed at him as if he were nothing more than an embarrassment. Nobody in that luxury hotel ballroom knew that the man she had just humiliated was the one person in the entire company who could decide whether she still had a job the next morning. Daniel Carter had arrived at the annual company celebration wearing the only suit he owned that still fit properly. His shirt was neatly pressed, his shoes were polished, and he had spent the entire afternoon worrying that he looked too ordinary for a room filled with executives, investors, and wealthy clients. But Daniel wasn't there to impress anyone. He had come because his 8-year-old son, Noah, had begged him to attend. Daniel had promised his little boy that after the party they would go home, eat pizza, and watch their favorite superhero movie together. What Noah didn't know was that his father wasn't simply an employee at Carter & Vale Industries. Daniel was the silent majority owner who had inherited the company years earlier and had deliberately remained behind the scenes, allowing professional managers to run it while he focused on raising his son after his wife passed away. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and never judging someone by their appearance, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Your support helps us bring more stories of compassion and hope to people everywhere. The evening began beautifully. Crystal lights reflected across the ballroom, soft music filled the air, and employees laughed together as servers carried expensive food between tables. Daniel stayed near the back with Noah, who was fascinated by the enormous chocolate cake displayed at the center of the room. But then came Victoria Sterling, the company's newly appointed female CEO. Victoria was brilliant, ambitious, and famous for demanding perfection. She had built her reputation by believing that weakness had no place in business. When she noticed Daniel standing near the dessert table, she frowned. She had seen him around the office before, but she assumed he was a low-level employee. His simple suit, quiet manner, and nervous attention toward his son made him look insignificant in her eyes. When Daniel accidentally stepped backward and bumped into a server, a plate slipped from the server's hands and landed near the cake. Victoria immediately marched toward him. Instead of asking whether anyone was hurt, she accused Daniel of ruining the company's most important evening. Daniel calmly apologized and offered to pay for the damage, even though he knew he didn't need to. Victoria's anger only grew. In front of dozens of employees, she told him that people like him had no place at an executive celebration. She demanded that security remove him before he embarrassed the company any further. Daniel looked around the room. Some people lowered their eyes. Others whispered. A few laughed nervously because they were afraid of Victoria. Noah stood behind his father, gripping his jacket with trembling fingers. Daniel could have ended the humiliation with a single sentence. He could have told Victoria who he really was. But he looked at his son and decided that protecting Noah's heart was more important than protecting his pride. He quietly said that they would leave. Then Victoria noticed the giant cake Noah had been admiring. In a moment of cruel impatience, she grabbed a piece and pushed it toward Daniel, mocking him for apparently wanting free food. The movement caused the cake to collapse across the table, and Daniel stumbled forward. Frosting covered his face and shirt. The ballroom erupted with shocked laughter. Noah began to cry. Daniel slowly wiped the frosting from his eyes. His heart wasn't breaking because of his expensive suit or the ruined evening. It was breaking because his son was watching adults treat his father as though he had no value. Daniel knelt beside Noah, cleaned his tears, and whispered that they were going home. He never raised his voice. He never insulted Victoria. He simply walked away. But the next morning, everything changed. At 8 a.m., the company's executive board gathered for an emergency meeting. Victoria arrived confidently, expecting praise for maintaining discipline at the party. Instead, she found Daniel sitting at the head of the table. The chairman beside him stood and introduced him as Daniel Carter, founder, principal owner, and the man whose family had built the company decades earlier. Victoria's face went pale. Daniel didn't celebrate her fear. He didn't humiliate her in return. Instead, he explained that he had stayed out of the spotlight because he wanted the company to succeed based on talent rather than his family name. He told the board that leadership was not about making powerful people feel important. It was about making ordinary people feel respected. Victoria expected to be fired immediately. Daniel had every legal right to remove her. But he remembered his son's tears and chose a different path. He told Victoria that brilliance without compassion could destroy everything a person worked to build. He offered her one chance to change, not for him, but for every employee who had ever been afraid to speak because of her position. Months passed, and something remarkable happened. Victoria began changing. She apologized personally to Daniel and Noah. She visited departments she had once ignored. She started listening before judging. She even created a company program to support single parents and employees facing difficult family circumstances. One afternoon, Daniel found Victoria sitting with Noah in the company cafeteria. She was helping him build a model airplane for a school project. Noah looked up at his father and smiled. Daniel realized that the greatest victory wasn't making Victoria lose her position. It was watching someone who had once confused power with strength finally understand that kindness was a greater form of leadership. Years later, employees still told the story of the company party. But they no longer remembered the cake. They remembered the men who had every reason to retaliate and chose forgiveness instead. And Daniel never forgot the lesson either. Sometimes the person you underestimate is carrying a story you know nothing about. Sometimes the quietest person in the room holds the greatest power. And sometimes true strength is not proving that you are important, it is choosing to remain kind when everyone else expects you to fight back. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Every interaction helps these stories reach someone who may need a little hope today. Before the story ends, comment, "Kindness is strength," if you believe that we should never judge someone by their clothes, position, or appearance. Because in the end, Daniel didn't teach Victoria who was more powerful. He taught her something far more valuable: a person's true worth is revealed not by how they treat the powerful, but by how they treat the people they believe have nothing to offer them.